Alright, so I apologize for the little bit more disheveled look than usual, but I got up today, got the daggum Final Fantasy II grind set up because you'll be getting a video on that pretty soon. But yeah, I got that set up. I was like, I gotta finish up this arc of Yu Yu Hakusho because it's that good. So today's subject is the Beast of Maze Castle arc from the Yu Yu Hakusho manga and anime. I specifically watched the anime version. So I'll try to get into it. So what we see as this starts off, we see as Yusuke comes back from his training with Genkai, I think it was like 1 or 2 months. He gets back, he knows many more powers and stuff like that. And then this time, it's revealed to him, there's these dudes in this place called Maze Castle, or Labyrinth Castle, that have this insect flute, bug flute, and they are using it to send these little flies called like Machaiku into the human world and corrupt those with poor souls to then essentially use them like zombies to attack other people and take over the world. So then Yusuke is sent to fight these beasts, and who ends up joining along is Kuwabara as kind of an assistant spirit realm detective. And we also see that Kurama and Hiei end up joining along too to kind of pay penance for their actions and like the 4 artifacts, or whatever it's called, the dark artifacts, I believe it was. So, we see as they end up going to Maze Castle, and their first trial is this gate, where all 4 of them are having to hold up this big column thing that's fallen on them. And even if one of them leaves and saves themselves, then all the other ones will die. So we see as ultimately they end up kind of talking it through. Some people get a little bit jaded at each other, specifically Kuwabara and Hiei, but ultimately Hiei is the one sent out since he is the fastest. He ends up running over to the area, and then this little bat eye looking thing kind of looks like, crap, what are they in Final Fantasy? Plagues. Kind of looks like a plague from Final Fantasy. And so, we see he gets out and is talking to them. He's like, he's not like this, but he ends up pulling the lever, and since he pulled the lever, a block falls on because it was meant to kill everyone. However, he's able to dodge it. The thing ends up lifting off of Yusuke and crew, and Hiei ends up using his sword to essentially best this little imp-looking thing. So we then see as they head on and they face their first major battle, which is Gindu. I believe his name is Gindu. And he's like this rock creature that can essentially fuse into rock and stuff like that. It's kind of cool, honestly. And who is sent up against him? Since there are 4 beasts of Maze Castle, there are also 4 members of Yusuke and crew. So we see as Kurama was sent first to fight him. And we actually get to see Kurama's ability and weapon. And it's like this rose whip. And it's honestly super cool. And we see as he kind of goes up against Gindu. And he has a little bit of trouble at first. But ultimately, he does end up taking a pretty nasty wound. But he does beat Gindu. So they end up heading up to the further floors, where now it is turn for Kuwabara to step up to the plate in more ways than one. So we see as he ends up getting up here to fight Byakko. Byakko is like this big cat-looking beast, and he is facing off against Kuwabara. Now, he doesn't even really fight him hand-to-hand at first. He takes out some of his hairs, and they turn into these demon pig things, and Kuwabara has a bit of a struggle fighting them, but he does ultimately end up skewering all of them and ultimately beating him. Then he ends up going toe-to-toe with Byakko. Now, Byakko, he is pretty powerful, and we see as Kuwabara tries to use his spirit energy sword against Byakko, and Byakko simply absorbs the spirit energy and becomes more powerful. So Kuwabara's trying to have to find a way to beat him. He knows he's gonna have to be Byakko in a hand-to-hand fight. However, it's dangerous for him to get into that proximity because Byakko has all of this new spirit power, or spirit energy. So we kind of see as this fight continues, and ultimately how Kuwabara ends up besting Byakko is he ends up taking his own life along with Byakko's by knocking him over the edge to the lava that they're fighting on. But due to Kuwabara's ability, his spirit sword can kind of act like Nyobu from Dragon Ball, and he ends up stabbing into the pillar and pulling himself up by propelling himself, actually. But yeah. So then we move on to the third fight of the Beasts of Maze Castle, where we see as it is Hiei's turn to fight someone. And he fights Seiryu. Seiryu has such a sick design. This fight is super cool because we see Seiryu has ice abilities, and he kind of starts freezing some of Hiei's limbs and everything. Hiei looks like he's going to have to struggle with this. However, he is simply too fast, and Hiei ultimately ends up beating Seiryu with a 16, slash attack that only... Well, Yusuke can only see 15 of them, and everyone else is just a couple of, really just a couple of very swift attacks. I had to look at my screen there because they just got through another grinding session. But yeah, so, see this, and this fight kind of plays out, like I said, pretty easily. It's a legit less than a whole episode, so that was really cool to see how powerful Hiei is. Hiei is one of these strong, sorry about that, my AirPod get a little dislodged there. But, to really see how powerful Hiei is, and that Hiei still kind of holds up even after having been beat by Yusuke. So we then see as they end up heading to the top, where there's a bunch of these demon corpse looking things. We actually get our first look at the big head honcho, Suzaku. And Suzaku ultimately ends up using these artificial humans, that kind of like zombie sludge things, kind of like Bio Broly in a way. And they end up having to fight Yusuke and crew. But ultimately, Yusuke is able to propel himself and get up to where Suzaku is. Now, we have another character we get introduced to, which is, I think it's Morgu or Muguru. It's this little bird thing. It looks really cool, honestly. I like the vibrant colors of it, but yeah, so I kind of focus on what's going on Earth for the time being. We see that Botan's going about and fighting all of the Machiku bug humans, and this starts to get a bit overwhelming, and Suzaku, through his little assistant bird thing, ends up learning that Keiko is Yusuke's Achilles' heel, as they specifically state. So he ends up sending some of these Machiku, or whatever you say, after Kiko, and we also see that Botan has to follow along and protect Kiko. So once Yusuke gets up there, Suzaku and Yusuke's fight begins. Now, Suzaku has a sick design. He genuinely looks like a Final Fantasy character. Like, if his hair was, well, if Firion from Final Fantasy II's hair was orange, like, I would say that Yusuke and, not Yusuke, but Suzaku and Firion look pretty similar. Or really, Suzaku kind of looks like the Emperor, or at least not the final, like, boss Emperor in Final Fantasy II. And it's just super cool. I really like Suzaku's design. He has the coolest design of any of the villains so far. And it's a really good fight. We see as Yusuke really struggles against Suzaku because his speed isn't up to snuff. His spirit energy really isn't up to snuff, and he kind of has to pull out some stuff out from his butt in multiple cases just to kind of win the fight. We see Suzaku has like this lightning-based spirit energy. It really looks like Chidori, and like just an orange Chidori, but it's still super cool. And we also see is like him and Yusuke have a clash with essentially their Chidoris, because Yusuke can also put spirit energy on his fist. But Suzaku is far more powerful. Suzaku keeps beating Yusuke. Like, Suzaku was genuinely the first threat in Yu Yu Hakusho that I felt, dang, this dude's actually powerful. So, see as they duke it out for a little while, and ultimately Suzaku ends up pulling out this, like, duplicate doppelganger ability, kind of like the mirror image technique in Dragon Ball, or the Mirage technique. And he ends up spawning 7 of himself, but these 7 are really, I guess it's more like Tien's ability. So he ends up pulling out the 7, but he doesn't divide his strength. Pulls out the 7, and he now starts using like this arrow ability on Yusuke, and Yusuke is beaten. And we see as the Machiku people start to kind of narrow in more on Botan and Keiko. So after this, we see as Yusuke is kind of put under torture because Suzaku wants to turn him into a demon. This kind of continues until ultimately Yusuke sees what is going on with Kiko and Botan, and he breaks out of this and starts to fight with Suzaku once more. But this is only for him to get beat again. So after getting beat again, he's kind of laying there, and he does do a lot of damage to Suzaku, but Suzaku ultimately ends up surviving this. And he gets up ready to fight Yusuke again, but then Yusuke thinks about what's going on with Botan and Keiko, which both of them ultimately end up surviving. He thinks about this, but he doesn't know that. And he gets up and is able to finish Suzaku off because Suzaku, in one of Yusuke's previous attacks, had wounded his antenna, which is like a main source for his power. And we ultimately see as through a lot of effort and struggle, Yusuke is able to beat Suzaku. And ultimately, the bug flute is destroyed. Everyone is released. School shut down for a little bit because like all the teachers got infected besides Takenaka or whatever his name is, the cool teacher. And yeah, then we see as everyone heads home, Yusuke asks where Botan and Keiko are. He ultimately ends up seeing that Keiko and Botan are okay and just kind of speaks with them, and that's where episode 21 ends, which is the end of the arc. So this arc was genuinely great. I love this arc. I love the fights. I love the characterization we got of Yusuke. Like, Yusuke is a super cool character. Like, he was legit just threatening to kill Suzaku multiple times. He's like, I'm going to kill you. And, I mean, he does. But, yeah, just kind of seeing this, it was really similar to Muscle Tower, but I liked this, or Muscle Tower from the original Dragon Ball manga, or anime, but I really liked the Beasts of Maze Castle arc more than Muscle Tower, because, like, Muscle Tower is really good, but, like, the abilities in Muscle Tower aren't as cool as the abilities we see here in the Beast of May's Castle arc. It was genuinely just a great arc. I love seeing Yusuke fight Suzaku, and Suzaku's genuinely got to be one of my favorite designed antagonists in all of Shonen. He just looks super, super cool. Like, I love his design, and it's genuinely just awesome. It's really cool. I highly recommend Googling it if you haven't watched Yu Yu Hakusho, which I don't know why you're watching, like, a video on the 4th arc in the series if you haven't, but yeah. So, I highly recommend going and looking at Suzaku because he is super cool, and the vibrancy of his colors and Muguru, or his little bird assistant's colors throughout this are very contrasting to the world we see with the Beast of May's Castle arc, but it works well because, like, you would expect the big head honcho to be like this dark brooding beast, but no, he's a very vibrantly colored evil individual. So I just very much so love this arc. It is most certainly my favorite arc through Yu Yu Hakusho so far, and I believe this is probably where Yu Yu Hakusho gets officially great. Like, there was not a moment in this entire arc where I was like, I don't really want to watch this, because it was genuinely just good all the way throughout. But yeah, that's all it really was for the Beast of May's Castle arc of Yu Yu Hakusho, and that's all I really have for episode 260 of Shelf Review. So, thank you very much for watching.